I'm excited to take everyone through our test and learn environment with iSpot and NBC. Before I dive into that, though, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Wayfair's broader approach to marketing and how we essentially plan our TV marketing channel. So overall, Wayfair sees marketing as a huge lever to unlock growth. With that, we don't actually use any budgets across our marketing channels. There's no marketing spends XYZ and channels kind of duking it out for their share of spend. Instead, there's really an emphasis on building our spend forecast from the bottoms up to make sure that we're spending at the appropriate level to achieve efficient growth. And so that essentially allows every channel to have the runway and leeway to accomplish growth and drive growth. And it also gives us a little more autonomy to make sure that every channel is truly optimizing based on performance and capitalizing on trends when they see fit. So for TV, we have a little bit of a multi-pronged approach to accomplishing that. So the first key KPI that we look at when we build our spend forecasts and our TV campaigns is incremental revenue that we're driving. So we have a pretty narrow lens of what it truly means to be incremental. And so we are constantly looking to quantify the impact that that last TV touch point had on a purchaser's ultimate journey and conversion. And so we actually use the iSpot individual user level data feed to help enable a lot of this. And we look at incremental revenue, the TV drives, both at a total TV level, as well as at the individual network level. The other way that we build our forecasts and our spend for TV is we use a media impact survey to help us figure out, for those harder to quantify pieces like brand perceptions and awareness of emerging categories, we use a media impact survey that's essentially always on and allows us to pinpoint brand health of TV exposed and TV unexposed audiences over a variety of dimensions. And so, again, we love our data at Wayfair, so we are always looking for more ways to support a data-driven approach and more opportunities to measure everything that we're doing. So with that, we were incredibly excited to partner with NBC and iSpot on this test and learn environment. Ultimately, our goal coming out of this was we wanted to be able to add a granular level of visibility into our delivery across linear and digital. I think we've historically tended to view those worlds as somewhat separate silos, just for the sake of campaign planning, because it can get hard to really understand how they play together. So NBC set us up very nicely. Shout out to the entire NBC team that put together a curriculum and has had weekly training sessions and Q&A sessions for us to walk through things. I got a little nervous when Kelly in the first session mentioned that there would be a syllabus and homework every week. But so far it's been, I would say, very, very seamless from an advertiser perspective. And for Wayfair, we were just really excited to get that cross-platform view of our video campaigns. We had some hypotheses going into this around which platforms would truly be incremental to what we're doing on linear, but we really wanted to be able to validate that. And then we kind of saw the next layer was, once we validate which platforms are incremental, how can we use that to help really tailor our creative messaging by platform? And so with that, we had a few pretty exciting findings that we learned. So the first one that I'll share here is we found that one NBC digital platform, 40% of our impressions on that platform were entirely incremental to our linear impressions. This was incredibly exciting for us because we do not have a small footprint on NBC Universal properties. We have a pretty strong linear presence across the board on NBC networks. And so we were a little afraid that it might be hard to really drive double-digit incremental reach there. And so we were incredibly excited about this finding. And I know I haven't named the platform. That is intentional based on our PR team. So apologies for keeping it anonymous, but we were incredibly excited by this finding. I think another finding that we thought was really interesting was we have a really, really strong presence on news programming across NBC's linear networks, including MSNBC, NBC AM, and PM News. We on linear have found that this is a pretty high value audience for us. And so we've prioritized seeking those audiences out on linear. turns out we are not tapped out in the slightest on news networks. So our one digital video news programming also drove really significant incremental reach, which I think we didn't necessarily think would be all of that feasible on news programming given our linear presence. And so for us, I think we were pretty hesitant to lean more heavily into news there. But ultimately, it turns out that's a pretty significant unlock for us. So that was another exciting finding that we found. And so thinking about how we want to translate these into next steps and how we really want to action on these key learnings, I think one big piece to acknowledge is Wayfair has historically taken a linear-led approach to CTV and linear TV. We've essentially said CTV should be entirely complementary to everything that we're doing on linear. So on linear, we can, air whatever messages we want, but they're mass reach, where CTV will allow us to make sure that we're hitting people the exact number of times that we want to hit them. And it'll also make sure that we're hitting people with the right messages at the right time in their customer journey. And I think one thing we were a little hesitant about or nervous about was being able to accomplish that effectively with our network direct buys. So if you go through a DSP, it's one thing, you feel like you can do sequential messaging, suppress certain screens a little more, easily and directly. Ultimately, this test and learn made it really clear that we were thinking too myopically about that, and that we really can get, with the right insights, we can be incredibly tailored and incredibly intentional with all of these network direct digital buys that we're doing. So we were incredibly excited to learn that we really can build these digital buys to be complementary around our linear campaigns. And then I think another key learning that came out of this was, I talked about wanting to be linear led with CTV kind of as a complementary layer. And at the end of the day, we want to take a similar approach with all of our messaging. So we've realized certain platforms are driving significantly more incremental reach than we realized. And those are the platforms where we really need to be intentional about pushing our core furniture and decor, core evergreen Wayfair messaging to make sure that those audiences are starting to get familiar with Wayfair, since they're ultimately not seeing us on TV. And then there have been other platforms where we realize they're much, much stronger frequency plays than incremental reach drivers. And so we need to be tailoring our creative to align and support that. So Wayfair is always trying to push, this whole subset of emerging categories that we have. Whether you are a past Wayfair purchaser or not, you might not know that we offer large appliances, for example. What we can do with these extra findings on these frequency networks is we can tailor our messages pretty exclusively to those emerging categories to make sure that those mature audiences are seeing the creatives and campaigns and value props that we want them to see. And I think one thing that's been a theme across all of this is whether or not an audience is a frequency driver, or platform, I'll say, is a frequency driver or a reach driver, is a lot more agnostic of our linear spend levels than we had initially anticipated. So we've been able to disprove a few hypotheses there and make sure that we're really effective with the way that we're spending on digital. So at the end of the day, I think I have a few recommendations or thoughts, I'll say, based on this study. I mentioned earlier, Wayfair is constantly looking for more data. We always want stronger measurement models to validate and measure the efficacy of our performance. And so this test and learn environment really provided us the leeway for that, and has really given us insights that we certainly did not have opportunity to dig into beforehand. And we've been able to discover new opportunities and really make sure that we're tailoring our campaigns effectively and optimizing in the way that we need to. And this is also going to influence our approach to Upfront. So this is helping us achieve a more appropriate, more ideal balance between digital opportunities and our linear-led campaign.